Nigerians are still reacting to the proposal put forward by the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to make drug integrity tests part of the screening requirements for aspirants seeking to contest various offices in the 2023 general elections. NDLEA Chairman Brigadier General Buba Marwa, retired, has said he wrote the chairman of the All Progressives Congress to conduct drug tests on all the party's aspirants, adding that he will write to the PDP and other political parties. The agency says that the advocacy is not just for politicians, but also to government appointees, as Kano State is already considering the procedure. But the Inter-Party Advisory Council has rejected the NDLEA's proposal for mandatory drug integrity tests as part of the screening requirements for aspirants seeking to contest political offices. IPAC described the move as outrageous, despicable, and deliberate attack on the sensibilities of lovers of democratic governance in Nigeria. In a statement by its national chairman, IPAC said that the awkward proposal portrays politicians as drug addicts who must be certified fit to run for various elective offices by the agency, describing the proposal as reprehensible and unacceptable. This is the crux of what we'll be talking about next. And joining me in the studio is the Director General, Christ Against Drug Abuse Ministry, Dr. Dokun Adedeji. It's nice to have you join me in the studio.
Thank you very much.
It's been a while now, though.
It's been a while, yes. Always times like this.
Yeah, I know you've been traveling a lot and handling different assignments on the field and all of that, but at least it's good to, drag you into the studio and, this time around, let's have a talk.
Thank you.
You've been with your organization, you have stood against the issue of drug use and abuse for a long time. And this issue on the front burner right now is generating a lot of debate and comments amongst Nigerians. Now, the chairman of the NDLEA, not just being a chairman, he's a retired military general, has been a governor of a state, not just any kind of state, but Lagos State for a period of time. So when he's coming from the perspective of what makes people act in a certain way, one would say he perfectly knows what he's talking about. But what do you make of this proposal?
Look, with due respect to the chairman of IPAC or whatever, I think he speaks from lack of understanding. This is a proposal that I think we should all embrace, but I do understand the aversion to it because people avert their minds only to punitive issues when you come to substance abuse or tests generally, mandatory tests. I think we should consider this is so important. If the IPAC gentleman can just try to understand the dynamics behind such proposal, he will appreciate it. In the sense that I don't think many Nigerians know that we're in a big mess with substance abuse and disorders. So until we know the pervasiveness and also the availability of this and also the accessibility that almost anyone can take it, we will begin to understand. And I need people to know that maybe that's what we need to disabuse our mind from. And NDLEA under Marwa has been trying to shift the discussion away from punitive to something to help rehabilitative and also help. So if we understand that having a test done is not to stigmatize, is not to deprive you of any benefit, but it's also to help you, your family, and the general society. Until we come to that understanding, we will not appreciate it. Incidentally, I belong to the special committee set up by General Marwa, and we've been discussing this for a while. Yes, we know there'll be obstruction to it. We know there'll be protest about it, but we are dogged about it, not in terms of force-feeding Nigerians to do it, but in trying to make Nigerians understand the necessity for doing it. And I think that's the stage we are in, which is probably why you brought me here, to let people understand that this is something we need.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the legal framework, because some of the persons I've spoken with have said that, well, there is no legal recommendations anywhere in our books to say that one has to go through this as a criteria for anything else. And they are putting it from that perspective. So if this is going to scale through, is it going to require the legal framework before it can scale for anyone at all to be? Because you can't compel people where there is no law or there is no rule or regulation to that effect. Or is it just going to be a moral suasion?
I think in the beginning it will be a moral suasion, and then people must also know that certain things do happen for the exigency of the moment. And so this is something that is new, and then we're looking about, I think what the general is trying to do is first of all start from letting people understand and the moral suasion behind it, and then why it's important. Then we can begin to look at the legality of it. But you know that in Nigeria, we always like to, it is things like that suddenly bring people, activists, to become human rights. Oh, it's against this, against this. True, there can be something, sometimes. Look at the face mask thing in America and the dimension it took. It then became something like human rights. You can't force me to do things. You see, but who tells you to put on a safety belt? You understand what I'm saying? You see, we need to look at the society dynamics that run the society and helps us make corrections or input into the way forward. This issue, if people must understand, let us say for the purpose of argument, you have a school. You tell your staff to do drug tests. They say, oh, they don't want to do. And then the driver of the school bus drives kids into the ocean. How do you feel about that? Or you get a pilot who is up there and it flies the plane into it destroys the plane. Look, people must begin to understand the dimension of substance abuse. That is not because you want to catch somebody or you know, the man is talking about addict. And that is also the erroneous impression that society gets, that everybody who uses drugs is an addict. It's not true. There are functional people who use drugs, who are lawyers, who are doctors, who are pilots, who are in government. They go to work, but they still use drugs. So the thing that we're talking about is, you know, when you talk about it, people look at the area boys and begin, oh, and so we label them. It is that element of labeling and stigmatization that is being translated into this issue. So if you test me and I'm positive, it means I'm an addict. No, it's not true. Why do universities take up the opportunity of testing their students? And we came from our own organization to say to them, do not expel them, because these are not addicts. They're experimental users, the occasional users, they're social users. And if you don't let them understand the detriments of what they're doing to their future and to their education, they would degenerate over a time. And so they began to send them for rehabilitation. And I can tell you that a lot of them have graduated to become men in society. So those are the dimensions that we need to begin to look at. Why should we have someone become a governor and uses drugs? How will he speak to young people not to use drugs? And I can tell you for free, politicians are against this because their instruments of campaign are these people. They get them, they come and campaign. Do they bring their own children to campaign? Of course not, because they know the violence that is inherent. So they shield their own children, but get the children of other people who are so-called addicts to come and do it. You see, we need to begin to look at our nation in a more holistic manner. If you don't take care of this today, look, go and look at the statistics of substance abuse in Nigeria. You'll be shocked. But do you know these statistics that we still relate to today? About 14.4 million Nigerians use substance, and that was 2019, 2018 statistics. Mr. Stope, who is the UNODC director, said by now we'll be close to 20 million. Do you know what 20 million is? 20 million is half the population of Ukraine. And so if we don't begin to look in that manner, we'll wake up one day, almost every person in productive sector use drugs. Not an addict, but use drugs. And when you use drugs, there's a tendency to become tolerant to it, and then there's a tendency to become an addict. You don't become an addict the day you use drugs. And I tell people, nobody wakes up to say, I want to be an addict. It's a progression, a downward progression. You see people, I've been to the joint before, I've seen people that we went to university together and living in the joint. You think they started one day? No, they didn't.
But talk to us basically. Why do people, what are some of these elementary reasons for anyone to want to use drugs?
Look, I tell people, it's equal to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. For each person who does drugs, there's a reason.
And the reasons could differ.
Oh, it could differ.
Person to person.
For person to person. For instance, some of the things we know, experimental. They go with their friends to a party, they serve it innocently. He takes it and he says something different. That's one. Family dysfunction, society dysfunction, and all the other elements of things, you say economic oppression, deprivation. You may say, oh, that's not enough. Everybody faces it. Each person has his own threshold of handling these things. And some people use it to say, I want to forget my problems, like alcohol, for instance. But the person forgets that if you use alcohol, you sleep. When you wake up, you pick up your problems. These things are just gimmicks of imagination. Yeah. They're not really true. Truly, there's a high that comes with using because you suddenly feel different. It makes you feel invincible. And that so it leads more. And
sometimes you have some kind of a false courage or false
absolutely.
Guts.
Absolutely. You know? That's why people say, oh, I'm a shy person. I can't talk to girls. But when he takes it, he can talk to anyone. But those are momentary. And those are things that people use for this. Oh, it makes you play football very well. It makes you read at night. It makes you... But I ask people, if you say it makes you sleep, like people say alcohol makes them sleep. So I ask them, before you met alcohol, how have you been sleeping? You will find that these things are just mere illusions perpetuated because it's a brain. You see, one thing again that we need to understand, substance abuse or addiction is a public health issue. It should not be seen legalistic or maybe criminal. If you criminalize people who use, what will you do to people who are barons? Lately, you saw the premier of British Virgin Islands, who was caught in the U.S. General Noriega was extradited. The Honduras president will soon be extradited. These are not small fries. People we see who use are just victims. So when you punish them, that is double jeopardy. You are punishing a person who is under a punishment. People think, don't mind that they went to use drugs because they don't have work. It's not true. Something leads somebody to. You have a family that is very rich, but there is no parental inclusion. A child is growing up. He has no relationship with his family. They have money, they have everything. The father thinks send him abroad for summer or something is good enough. But what about emotional?
Now, let us understand from the proposal by NDLEA, if the drug, I know it's still being worked out, it's still being molded, but the point is, if the drug test is carried out, integrity test is carried out on anybody contesting for anything, as the case may be, and the person fails the test, what is supposed to happen? Does it disqualify the person from contesting, or what is it supposed to be?
That is, I'm sure, the bane of the contention from politicians.
Okay.
So if I test positive, what happens? They know two things happen. People then know. Stigma comes. He can't run for office. That's not the point.
But on the other hand, it won't be made public.
It may not be made public because it's your test. Yeah. But the thing is, there should be a follow-up, a sequelae to it. If you test positive, you can't be in the position you want to be, at least for that moment. Go and seek management, and then you can if you get clear, look, one thing that people they should go and read Obama's book, Dreams from My Father. Obama had used drugs before. He wrote in his book, but he stopped. He's still struggling with nicotine, that is cigarette, but that's socially acceptable. But the important thing is, would you like to do something about it? Because you can't be using drugs and be running public office. We must know that. So the thing is, which I think is the bone of contention, should I be able to compete? At last, that election, I don't think we should allow you. I don't know what the discussion will still be. I don't think you should be in office. Because if you're in office, and I mean, some people will know that you are positive, then it becomes a role modeling issue for other people. If that man is this, Why can't I? You understand that kind of, so the question I'm asking is that they should also look at, what if a boy comes from under the bridge that we know, and he contests and he wins? How are we going to, you see, the whole thing on the long run is to change the paradigm of people about substance use. It is not a criminal thing. It's a public health issue. If you go and check, they'll tell you it's a progressive health condition, brain disease, that is substance abuse and addiction and all the. So in my own, our assessment, depending on what the law then says, is if you test positive, you step away. Because how can you test positive? These things somehow will leak, and international bodies know that you are, and you come to their country to come and talk. If they now make you the chairman of the narcotics in the house, what will be, how do you handle that? We must look beyond today in the things we contend with. It may not be palatable to us in the interim, but on the long run, of what benefits, of what social general benefit is it to the nation, not self-interest. Many of these people contend against it, fighting against it, using those strong words against the NDLEA. There must be some interest being served. What do they have against it? When schools, institutions test, and we say institutions can test students, you can't test politicians.
Oh, that's another issue, because the point that in some schools,
oh, absolutely, it's part of,
and there's no problem with that.
And there's no problem about it.
Okay, right.
Some schools do wrong; they send them away, which I don't agree with. As long as the person is not an addict, most students are not. Why send them away? Why not give them a second chance? It's the same thing about politics. If students can be sent away from school, why can't we send politicians away?
Food for thought there. We certainly, this debate is still on amongst Nigerians. Should they not, and all of that. But if nobody has anything to lose, like you were saying, all right, it's okay. Dr. Adedeji, thank you so much for coming on the program.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.